Todd Graham, a wonderful man. He's our speaker today. He's a local father. He's been working in health care in the IT arena, and he's aware of like all the technologies coming out with how to assist patients with mental illness uh, through apps and different IT opportunities, which is wonderful. And he's here to share an important message with us about his journey. So thank you all. Todd.
Thanks, Pam, for having me. I feel lucky to sit with these folks because I too am a startup, right? These guys have been raising a lot of money and doing a lot of things, and we're just kind of getting our feet wet in this arena. My wife and I were blessed with 4 children. I just graduated a daughter last weekend from Ohio State, and we were blessed with triplet boys. And 10 months ago, almost 11 months ago, we lost Rob Graham to suicide. He would have been a senior at Moeller this year, and he was a kid that was larger than life. We've all heard these stories, right? There were no signs, there were no serious things that we looked at. He was a kid that dealt with struggles like all kids that we know, and we just thought he was growing up, and that's the way it was. So suddenly on June 23rd is when we lost Rob, and he would have been a senior at Moeller. He was would have been a starting goalie on the lacrosse team. Lacrosse is something that I've shared with my kids and my family. As a high school and college lacrosse player myself, I've been coaching lacrosse in the area for probably 10 or 15 years now, and everybody wondered why I coached, and I always said to give back, and I never really knew what that meant until we lost Rob. And it's important for us to know that the privilege that we have, or that I have as being a coach, and currently I'm coaching high school lacrosse players on the girls' side, but the privilege that I have with that also comes with an obligation. I coach at a Catholic high school here in town as my second job, if you will. I tell everybody I have a real job, but my real passion is the coaching side of things, and that's just to allow me to be a part of these young people's lives. And that privilege also comes with that obligation that I spoke of, and that obligation is to see these kids and to see when they're, as I say, above the bar or below the bar, right? And you get too far below the bar, that's when you need to find some help. And it's a situation where throughout these schools there are tons of resources that are waiting to help these kids, but if there's not somebody there to say, hey, go look at so-and-so or give so-and-so a call, then so many times they just don't know that. And so what we've come up with the G. Rob Graham Foundation to get started, my other son has called it Athletes for Awareness, which is what we're doing. And there's really 3 legs to that stool. And I want to share those 3 with you today, and then a couple quick anecdotes of what we've been doing in the last year for that. So I am talking to other coaches and telling them the same thing that I am. I coach not because of the X's and O's, but I coach because of that relationship that I can have with the kids. And I'm telling the other coaches to make sure that they are aware of those responsibilities that they have. The second leg of the stool, which I think is just as important, I'm talking to the families, and I'm talking to the parents as we're sitting in the preseason meetings, or we're sitting in the sidelines watching our kids play games. Everybody sits there and thinks that they're the only family that has a mess in their life, and that they can't possibly look at the family next to them and think that anybody else is going through what they're going through, and so we stay quiet. And by being quiet, we're just as guilty as the other ones that aren't seeking help, right? So we need to talk about that. And then thirdly, we're talking to the students, the athletes, and letting them know that mental health is something that, as we heard earlier, diabetes and cancer and other things, it's a physical ailment that needs to be treated, and we should remove the stigma from that. And so those are kind of the 3 legs of the stool, if you will, that I'm talking about. We had our first event, which is how we got hooked up with Assurance Health, we had our first event as a preseason leadership meal where we had seniors from 10 different high schools come in with their coaches. And we had speakers from Cincinnati Children's talk to them, and we had some ex-athletes talk about leadership and what it means to be a senior leader on a team to deliver that message back. And we ran it backwards from what most people would think. Most of the time you have a meal, you have a speaker, and everybody says goodbye. And we did it the other way around. We had the speakers first. We orchestrated these tables so that we had kids from different high schools, and then we made them talk. We gave them cue cards on the table of discussion points so that these topics would be discussed. And then we ate afterwards and continued those discussions. And so it really worked well. 2 hours into it, our time was up on our spot that we had given, and we had to kick kids out that were continuing to talk. So we know we got that message across to them, and we know that they're going to take that message back to their underclassmen that are on those teams and be able to keep that message going. Every once in a while, I hit, as I call it, I hit the trifecta, where I can talk to students and coaches and parents all at the same place. This happened just last month over in Indianapolis at Brebeuf Jesuit Prep School, where we had a 6-team tournament that was being played, and all 6 schools came together for a Sunday Mass before they played their last game that afternoon. And at the end of the Mass, the priest gave me the floor to be able to talk about that to not only the coaches that were there, but the students that were there and the parents that were there. So it was a really great opportunity for us to be able to talk to everybody and deliver all 3 of those messages while everybody was sitting together. And finally, one of my seniors at St. Ursula Academy is developing her capstone project this year, and it's an alumni game, if you will, between 2 schools in Cincinnati that are rivals. And she's delivering this as her capstone. Hopefully it will continue year after year to be able to raise funds for Rob's Foundation and to continue the education and those sorts of things going forward. That's coming up for the first week of June after school's out for that. So finally, I want to close with a quick story about how I got involved with Assurex Health. I was in lacrosse invitational up in Detroit, and it was October, and it was raining and snowing and sleeting, and I was sitting in the hallway, and we were all dripping wet, and some guy next to me by the name of John Bolano was sitting next to me, and he said, "What do you do? Where do you live?" And he said, "Oh, I work in Cincinnati." And I said, "Really? What do you do?" And he said, "I'm in bioinformatics." And I thought, I have no idea what that means. But anyways, John and I had kept in contact through LinkedIn, and after last summer and the loss of Rob, I'd reached out to John because I'd heard about GeneSight and what was going on here, and obviously we didn't know about it beforehand. And so I wanted to come in and tell my story to John, and John welcomed me into that corner office over there, and we sat and talked, and he said, "If there's anything we can do to help, you just let me know." And a couple months later, he put me in contact with Pam as we were getting our first event kicked off for that preseason leadership meal, and Assurex was gracious enough to help underwrite the cost of that. So I want to thank you all for that, and I really appreciate you coming in and letting me share my story today. Thank you.